what I'm going to do is talk to you a bit about the top-down first and how we organise ourselves, because I think that's quite important. And Lego is a very unusual company, not least of all because it's family-owned. We do not have that quarterly panic that happens in every other business I've ever worked in. So it's a bit different. And it's also, we are blessed with a family who not only get children and play and their product, but they get operational excellence in what it does. So that kind of helps. So I can take the leader piece out of the equation almost. So let's talk a little about the Lego Group. So our mission is to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. Very, very simple mission. It's something that we just totally believe. As I think I mentioned earlier, we're on a plan basically that says we want to grow from where we are today, about 100 million children using Lego, either through sales or through our foundation or through our educational stuff, and about 100 million lean people playing with Lego bricks in the background. And then we want to move that to 300 million children by 2032, which will be the 100th anniversary of the company. The company started making wooden products. It was originally building and windows and stuff like that. Went into the Great Recession and the Depression, rather, the late 20s, decided to make toys, and that's how this got started. And Lego is a combination of two Danish words, leg and go, which basically means let's play. And so that's how it became, and that's how we started. We're, as I said, family-owned, 35,800 million krona, which is our 2015 number, a bit more of that now. 34% operating margin, just a little bit different from our last speakers, who were talking about 1.2%, I think, or something like that. We have the slide slightly mocked up, but we have now about 19,500 employees. And that's been part of our problem over the last couple of years, in that we have grown so fast that we've thrown a lot of new people into the business. And one of the things we're working very hard at is our culture and what we're calling our LEAP culture to get that going. 11, it says there, it's now 12 years of continuous growth, sold in about 140 countries, and about 60% of the stuff we sell every year is new. But it's all based around the brick, okay? And for you Americans in the audience, not Legos, bricks. It's Lego and bricks, okay? And the Danes get rather upset about that. So, and basically that was the big transformation. 2003-04, really struggling, really not going anywhere, in fact going down. And a complete reshape of the business, a rethinking, a genius guy, talk about one catalytic leader to change the business. So the family talked to our strategist, ex-McKinsey guy, Jürgen V. Knustock, who said, what do you think we should do? He went and presented to them, and the family said, that's brilliant, why don't you run the business? And that's what he's been doing. He's actually just resigned from that. We have a new CEO now, and we're moving forward, and Jürgen actually has kind of unofficially joined the family, and is now part of the foundation and doing that stuff. That's the growth pattern. As you can see, it's pretty stellar. And in terms of turnover, it doesn't quite tell the whole picture, because the turnover here, it looks all right, but we were making a loss somewhere down here, and in dire straits. And we've had basically straight profit ever since that turnaround. We're organised in a very unusual way. This is actually about a year old, this picture. It's just slightly changed, but we do not have divisions. And actually, Lego as a company see divisions as divisive. And what we have is corporate management areas who work together. And we're almost the closest thing to a communist regime you can imagine, where 20 odd very senior people get together and talk about how the business is going to move. And if I'm in finance, I actually work in this piece here. If I'm in corporate business services and I have a great plan and I want to put in a new SAP system for payroll this year, but our friends in EU Moulding and Duplo say, actually, we're really struggling, we need to change machinery, we have the discussion, and we give them our money. And that's the way it works. And it works in a very, very adult way. One of the things you can do in a company like that, because we don't have that financial problem all the time. We don't have to report to the city. Although we do, unusually for a family company, talk every year about our results, and it's in all the papers and all of that stuff. And you may have seen pictures of our old CEO dancing to Everything Is Awesome when we hit that number back in 2015-16. So let's talk a bit about strategy. We have 4 priorities, and I actually reckon everybody in this room probably says those are our priorities. There's a shock. There's very few things that are new, right? They're just are. So we want to expand global presence. So we are moving, and that means China and Far East Asia. 40% of our business is in the Americas, mostly North America and USA and Canada. 40% is in Europe, mostly UK, Germany, and then into Eastern Europe, where we're pretty strong, or Central Europe, as they like to call it. But Far East is pretty low at the moment. We're growing those territories. We're not in India, we're not in a whole bunch of those places, not in terms of the way you would imagine. So a lot going on there. Digitalization, a massive thing for us. How do you turn the digital into the physical? How do you get kids to play or watch the film or whatever, and then come home and build stuff and do all those things? So a big area of expansion there. And then, of course, in the middle, this sustained core commercial and operational momentum, which includes the building of new factory and a whole range of other things, and creating what we call the organisation of the future, because we can't keep growing at about 2,500 people a year in a 19,000 people. That's a lot of people. I was one of, I think, last year, one of 3,000 new people that joined the business. That's very hard to sustain. So we've got to find different ways of doing it. I was interested, by the way, in Singapore. Somebody was mentioning Singapore earlier this morning. And one of the things we're seeing there, that's a very small state. Andy was talking about it. Very small state with a lot of very high buildings, and it can't take any more people. So actually, the Singapore government have asked Singapore University now to explore lean, to work out how Singapore can become more efficient so they don't need more people, because they can't actually cope. And it's a very interesting move. And lean, some of those Lean Institute are very involved in some of that stuff. So we have strategy deployment, and this is, I've been doing this stuff since, full-time quality change stuff since 1990. This is the first business I've been in who actually uses Hoshin and actually drives strategic deployment down through the organisation, right through the levels. We take it down about 4 levels in the organisation. So we have our brand framework, which is driven out from, drives our strategic priorities. We have what we call must-win battles. Maersk Line, whom I also work for in Denmark, use the same phrase, so I suspect they use the same consultant. And or read the same book. And then that goes into a thing we call strategy deployment, of course, which is a classic X matrix. It's clunky, it's Excel-based, it's a pain in the ass to change, but it works. Yeah. And my first job for the first 8 months when I joined was to drive the strategy for 2017 to 2020 into corporate business services, because we're now in a new planning period. So we have a 4-year plan. We have a 1-year piece that's nailed down for 2017, and we're all working like Billy-O to get that done. And so that's kind of the way we work. In terms of moving that into business services, corporate business services looks a bit like this, and we're a brand new group, started just over a year ago. Our job is to take those tasks from the rest of the business that don't add any real value to their end product. Back office tasks like finance, like HR, like some of the procurement stuff, whole load of things that we're now taking over. And in fact, Lego Continuous Improvement has just moved, in the process of moving into that group. And so we've got a real change going on, a real engine to change at Lego, which is a really exciting place to be. So adjusting with scale, right service quality, increase productivity, secure compliance, manage risk, drive simplicity, just manna from heaven to an OpEx guy, right? So all the things that we care about. And basically what I'm doing now is taking them on a journey. We have traditionally thought this way. So top-down strategy and targets, direction, recognition, support. And what I'm starting to do with these guys now is to talk about bottom-up. Because one of the things I recognized when I joined was that we have no real connection. That top-down stuff's lovely, but the connection bottom-up wasn't working. And I'll explain in a moment why it wasn't working and what we're doing to change that, to drive it very dramatically, actually, in using some very simple lean techniques. So we're trying to get to a point where the performances of our service become visible throughout the organization's actions are taken by the right group and problems are solved at the right level. Massively important for this, and not the norm in those Lego back office areas. Absolutely not the norm. So we thought of things a bit differently, and we tried to do some stuff, and it hadn't really worked. And so what I tried to do was describe the future. I think one of our jobs as operational excellence leaders is to start to draw pictures for people. In Virgin Media, we called it Swamp to Summit. In Lego, we talk about our future state, and we talk about what that will mean for CBS. We have a mandate, how that will work, and we get that running, and we work on it constantly. We have a CBS leadership team meeting in Shanghai next week, where we're talking about our mandate, where we're talking about a whole run of things, and believe it or not, for the first time ever, we're having our first performance management meeting for CBS, where we're going to talk about each other's performance. We're a very Danish business, so that means we're allowed open and frank discussion, which is fantastic, I tell you. It's a really lovely thing, having been in telecoms for 12 years, where everything's political and, frankly, to use the Irish term, shite. And so it's been a real revelation to us in terms of the way that works. This is our old model for LCI in administration and back offices. We've got a guy there, he's a brilliant guy. He got his master's on the basis of turning John Shook's book in Learning to Think into a training course, and we sheeped it to a whole bunch of managers, and blow me down, it didn't work. We've got some lovely boards, and this is when you get to that ugly baby syndrome piece, right? So we've got these lovely boards, they've all got monthly measures on them, so anybody here drive their car solely through the rearview mirror? I suspect not, right? Because you know you're going to have a lot of accidents, unless you're going backwards, and then it's not a bad idea. So everything was rear viewed. We had nothing forward looking, and they loved it. And I went round on my first group round that thing, and they were so proud of their boards, and I had to somehow tell them they were useless. And the nice thing about Danes is you can tell them they're useless. They may not like you very long for a little while, but then they'll come back to you and say, actually, I know what you mean now. And we've got it going. My old boss, by the way, is a southern, from one of the southern states in the US, used to say, well, Peter, if it's brown and smelly, it probably isn't ice cream. And that's exactly basically what we've been doing now with these guys. So we now know we ain't got much ice cream. And we've got to rethink, and we've got to start to get it going. And so, my wife, by the way, those of you around this evening might meet her, so she laughs, right? She's a model queen. And I tell her this is a model, and she says, it's got 2 bloody boxes, how can it be a model? And she's right, but it's simplistic, right? And I actually learned this in GE. This is the master black belt model in GE, and how you roll this out, right? And if we go back to the old model, and all you do is you dump a load of stuff in there and hope that they shovel fast enough and they understand, you'll get some very pretty things, but you actually won't get operational excellence. But with this model now, we're taking them on a journey, and this journey is fairly obvious in terms of what to do. Some analysis, some planning, then delivery, and a whole bunch of things we're working on. I'll show you in a moment or so what that looks like. And it looks a bit like this. So this is accounts receivable in Singapore. Never had a meeting outside their monthly meeting before we started this. They now meet every day. For, at the moment, 30 minutes. We're actually nudging them down to 15, but at the moment for 30 minutes every day. They look at 1 measure a day at the moment, because we're actually struggling to get some data quickly enough for them. But every day they have a discussion. Every one of our meetings in every part of our organisation now in CBS have an agenda that looks remarkably like that. That actually I stole from Maersk in our Maersk operating system, exactly the same sort of model. Very simplistic, prettier of course than Maersk because we don't have ships, we have Lego models and stuff like that in it, and more colour. We have some very standard components, so what we're going to do, we talk about roles, voice of the customer, performance, problems, actions, hot topics and so on. We have some metrics which we're trying to get better and better at, and we have a plan, do, check, act board that they love. Absolutely love. And in 6 weeks, we took, or they took, sorry, that's completely wrong words, they took accounts receivable in Singapore from the worst performing to the best performing accounts receivable unit in our business. We're split across 3 sites, by the way, Singapore, Monterrey in Mexico, and Prague, Kladno in Prague. And they've become the best performing. And they found out some stunning things, you know, that they should have known. And they've come back to me and said, look, we're kind of embarrassed, you know, we didn't know that the ANZ, Australia, New Zealand area was our worst payers. We didn't know we had a customer that was 240 days late. We didn't know that our age dead wasn't that until we started to look every day. And you know what, we fixed it. And I said, oh, that's fantastic, but that's not the root problem, is it? And they said, no, it's not the root problem. What we found out is that our ANZ customer care people are the least connected to us of all the groups across Europe, across Asia. Now they're connected. We actually are solving so many problems now. We think people are going to be paying us before we give them bricks. That's not true. But we think that we're moving it so fast now. It's going so well. And that's this is day one, first stage, right? We haven't got to things like skills matrices. We've got global processes for the first time ever. They're not actually allowed to change a process without going through a process of how to change a process. So they've got people to talk to make sure that they can align, get those processes right. We have an organisation now at the back of that drives all this. And that's basically about 8 weeks' work. So it's not a massive piece of work in reality. The key to all this is getting permission to play. And in Lego, that's not that hard to do. And the key to that was then taking it from there and actually delivering something. So we're now we have a pilot going in every facet of corporate business services now. So we have one in AR, in AP, in general ledger, in HR service desk, in recruitment support, in payroll, master data, and a bunch of others that we're just about to start in business process improvement and in facilities, which is our next big area. And we're driving that as hard as Lego and as hard as we can in a very friendly way. I'm telling them it's okay to decorate your board. It's all right to have to celebrate. We don't only have to talk about red things, which was the mantra before. And we can use the Carter questions, but we'll use the Carter questions not as some sort of church-based, what's the best way to put it? But first one I ever went to, okay? We have a monthly meeting. The guy who's running it is using the Carter questions because that's what he's been told in his training, right? So the first question is, what is the target condition? And the answer was, we haven't got a target. And then he went on to the second question. I said, whoa! We haven't answered the bloody first question yet, so we can't go to what's the current condition because you don't know whether it's good or bad, right? And that was the kind of problem we had. And we had this organisation that sucked all this information in and then said, yeah, we will do, and they went off and did it. And now we're going from that sort of preacher preaches, congregation respond, to driving it in a completely different way. And it's an exciting, really exciting journey. Identical journey to the one we drove in Virgin Media as well, which is now part of Liberty Cable, where we're trying to do exactly the same thing and just connect the bottom. And you can see when these guys get good at this, and they start to think, oh my God, right, I get why I'm doing this now, because I can see where I am, not just in CBS strategy, but in Lego strategy, and therefore in the global thing. Boy, it just sets fire, and plan, do, check out. It's as simple as you can get. Works, it just works. We'll go to Six Sigma maybe if one day we learn how to count. Okay, and at the moment we can't really count, so we'll get there. I just wanted to, I think this is my last slide. This I wrote originally to try and ask people to get in. Just, if you have a look at it for a moment, this is why we do this stuff. It's kind of nice, isn't it? Yeah. That started as a vision. By the way, our Singapore team are rewriting this at the moment. Both as team members and as leaders, we're going to create a day in the life of for each of these, and we're using these as motivational videos now to start to talk about it. But it's a lovely way of describing what happens. Oh. To finish with the joke. That's it. Any questions?
Peter, we got time for maybe one or two questions, and then I got some announcements. Any questions for Peter? You're wild, Peter. Great. Well, another excellent.